You ever wake up one morning and just know without a doubt that today's the day someone's going to push you too far? That was me, standing in my slippers in a haze of concrete dust, my garden looking like a crime scene, flowers mashed to pulp by tire tracks, and my old no trespassing sign still clinging to its post like a last-ditch declaration of war. And there she was, Lindsay Walsh, the self-appointed queen of Oakwood Heights, planning herself on my property, doling out orders to construction crews like she owned every inch of this neighborhood. Didn't ask, didn't warn, just barreled across the property line, smile pasted on eyes, cold as winter, acting like I was the nuisance for speaking up. That's the day folks started calling me the troublemaker, but what they didn't realize was I'd seen this play before, and I'd been ready for my move. Now let me back up a sec. I'm David Martinez, 38 years old, lived here 15 years, government job, paperwork regulations. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me reading up on the law over coffee. Lindsay, though, she's all flash sharp, blonde bob, ice blue eyes smile you could cut glass with. She's run the HOA board for 3 years, all charm in public, but behind closed doors she's wheeling and dealing. And the one thing she didn't know about me was I probably knew those laws she tried to bend better than she did. The whole mess really kicked off 3 months earlier when Lindsay announced her vision: widen the entrance, put in new parking, drag us into the 21st century. Promised higher property values, more visitors, less traffic, secret meetings, backroom deals, and suddenly she'd convinced the board to greenlight a major construction project, a shiny new access road. The first I heard of it, I saw guys in hard hats surveying right up to my garden tape, measures out, scribbling notes. I walk over, polite as can be, what's going on? They say, "Oh, we're laying groundwork for the new road." I call Lindsay for details she gives me. The official tone tells me it's internal HOA business and I don't need to concern myself. I ask to see the paperwork. She laughs. "You're not a board member. These are confidential documents." She hangs up before I can say another word. A week later, I find a violation notice taped to my door, $200 fine for excessive vegetation. Turns out it's my wildflowers, deliberate, 6 inches tall, nothing but pollinators and seeds for next year. I call Lindsay, try to explain, and she just tells me cold as a stone that regulations say nothing can be over 4 inches. I checked the handbook and wouldn't you know, it was always 6 inches. But someone changed it to 4 with an effective date 2 days before my ticket. No vote, no notice, just a new rule out of thin air. Third strike came at the next HOA meeting. Packed room, 30 neighbors, Lindsay up front calling out certain residents for being selfish, blocking progress. Every head in the place turns toward me. I ask to speak and she shuts me down. This is not a debate forum, David. After that, neighbors stopped talking, crossed the street. When they saw me coming, felt like the whole world turned against me just based on her word. But nothing compared to that spring morning when construction started. 6 a.m. rumbling engines outside my window garden, torn up property line, gone. I ran out robe slippers, hair everywhere, and asked the foreman to hold off until we checked the lines. He just said, "HOA's orders, nothing I can do." Then Lindsay stormed up, face flushed, and barked, "David, you have no right to interfere. This is approved, permitted, and legal." I stayed calm, told her I was worried about my property. She laughed in my face. "You think you own half the neighborhood. This is community land." I could feel myself boiling, but I swallowed it down. I'd learned it pays to stay quiet and document everything. Now here's where things flipped. I set up a barricade, big official looking, just enough to block the site. Figured if they want a fight, let's do it by the book. Lindsay lost it. Called 911, said I was threatening workers. Cops rolled up lights and sirens half the block outside with their phones filming. Lindsay played victim. This man has been harassing us, making threats, blocking improvements. She was giving the performance of her life. But see, she didn't know one thing. I wasn't just some guy with a garden. When the officer walked over, hand on his belt, I handed him my government ID. "Morning, officer. I'm David Martinez, Senior Inspector with the County Land Management Bureau. We have a potential boundary violation and unpermitted construction." Suddenly the cop's face changed, went from dismissive to, "Yes, sir." I asked him to halt work until we checked permits and boundaries. He called for backup, radioed for a county surveyor, and started looking at Lindsay a whole lot differently. I pulled up the county's cadastral map on my phone, QR code, right on my mailbox, and showed him red lines, my property construction smack in the middle. Lindsay kept ranting, but the officer turned to her and said, "Ma'am, we need permits and proof this is HOA land." She blustered, tried to stall, but she was caught. She had nothing. The surveyor showed up, did a full check, and proved what I'd been saying all along. Construction was on my land, not HOA, not public. And they'd filed fake documents saying I'd given verbal permission. Worse, they never got permits. Major violation. The neighbors, some of whom had turned against me, started muttering, seeing the truth come out. And then came the twist. I didn't expect. Lindsay's husband, Robert, stepped forward. I warned Lindsay about this. She wouldn't listen. "I'm sorry, David. Turns out he's a lawyer, knew from the start she was breaking the law." And for the first time, Lindsay looked scared. 3 days later, we had the biggest HOA meeting Oakwood Heights ever saw. Nearly 200 people packed the room. Usually you're lucky to get 20. Lindsay tried to play it cool, but she was shaking. Old Mr. Peterson stood up, retired Army. Doesn't mince words, asked how illegal construction is a misunderstanding. Lindsay tried to talk circles, but I pulled out the evidence maps, phone recordings, everything. The room turned on her. Mrs. Chin, my neighbor, asked if Lindsay knew I was a county inspector. Lindsay stammered, then the community attorney chimed in. If she did, it's criminal. Robert, her own husband, stood and laid it all out. She'd changed rules behind everyone's back, targeted me, manipulated the board. Tom Bradley and Sarah Kim. The other board members backed him up, said Lindsay lied to them too. When I showed the repair bills for my garden, over $15,000 with another $50K in possible fines, the room erupted. Peterson motioned for a vote to remove Lindsay as president. Hands shot up everywhere, 187 for 3 against. Just like that, Lindsay was out. She stood up, tears and rage in her voice, shouting, "You'll all regret this, David, you'll pay." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You've already paid for your own actions." Justice was done, but the real work started then, rebuilding trust, fixing what she'd broken. A couple weeks later, Mrs. Chin showed up on my porch with a homemade apple pie, smiling for the first time in months. "You saved this place, David. We all owe you." Turns out Lindsay had spent tens of thousands in HOA money on shady improvements, including $12,000 to her brother's construction company. The interim board did a full audit, and I helped draft new rules. Any project over $1,000 needs a community vote, financials get published monthly, and no more rule changes without at least 60% approval. Real transparency for once. Lindsay was charged with fraud, property violations, and abuse of office. Robert filed for divorce, moved away, sold their house at a loss. Nobody wanted that baggage. The board asked me to run for president, but I said no. I wanted shared power. A council of 3 co-presidents so no one person could ever hijack the community again. 6 months later, I'm watering my new rose garden, kids playing in Lindsay's old yard, families laughing together. Mrs. Chin's sign in my yard says, "Thank you, David, guardian of Oakwood Heights." But it's not about me, it's about what we all learned. Sometimes the people who seem weakest are the ones who can change everything, not because they shout the loudest or throw their weight around, but because they refuse to let injustice slide. Now, when I walk the neighborhood at dusk, I see folks talking gardens, blooming a sign at the entrance, "Oakwood Heights, a community built on justice and respect." That was Mrs. Chen's idea, funded by everyone. And I know next time someone tries to pull what Lindsay did, it won't just be me standing up, it'll be all of us. So what do you think was justice really served? Or is this just round one in the endless battle for what's right in our little slice of suburbia? I'd love to hear what you'd do if you were in my shoes. Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk about it.